WZYQ. WZYQ, Stereo FM, Braddock Heights. WZYQ.
Your chance for a minute and 40 seconds inside a record store could come this hour. It's 8 o'clock. Oh, the Kimosabe. It's your music connection. WZYQ. Kimosabe 14ZYQ. Get the oatmeal ready, Tonto. We're going to need it for the days already. Morning, Kimosabe. Sample the story, man. All I get is smoke cream in here. 2 minutes after 8 o'clock. Coming up at this hour, another chance for you to win to a super sweep and more cancellation.
Well, anyhow, that was the some memories of the great old 14ZYQ, WZYQ in Frederick. That's our DCRTV Plus flashback of the day today. Found that thing in the little audio thing there in the DCRTV archive, audio archive. 14ZYQ was on 103.9 in Frederick. And what was the AM frequency? 1370, I think, right? And it was a really cool top 40 station throughout a lot of the 80s. Easily listenable here in the western suburbs of Washington. And the 1370 frequency was eventually changed to what is currently now, what is it? The 820 frequency, which is in Frederick. So there is no 1370 anymore. It's now 820. And so 820 now is Federal News Radio, so that frequency is now that. And the 104 frequency for the old ZYQ was 103.9, Frederick's 103.9, which is currently a WTOP relay. And for many years, the 103.9 and the 104.1 down in La Plata were tied together, and a number of stations, including the old Z104 and Extra. Well, it was extra 104, but it wasn't 103.9. When they linked the 103.9 and the 104.1 together for Z104 and some other stations there. So there, yeah, for the old Z104 with Bonneville owned both. Anyhow, Bonneville sold the 104.1. It's now Praise 104.1. They kept the 103.9, which is now Relay WTOP. The 1370 is no longer there, and it's now 820, which is Bonneville's Federal News Radio. And Bonneville will no longer own WTOP in a couple days. The closing for Hubbard will be taking place really soon, I'm told, by the end of the month. And Hubbard will now own WTOP, WFED. So there, and that little 1050 AMer in Silver Spring. Interesting stuff today. Oh, I was listening to WMAL this morning. Interesting stuff. Andrew Breitbart, the internet maven dude, the guy who worked with Brudge and all that, the right-winger, was kind of co-hosting the show there with Brian Neiman. And interesting, his musical tastes and mine are about the same. We really, really love that British indie rock, new wave stuff from the 80s. Smiths and New Order and Depeche Mode, and then some American bands like Devo and The Cure. So interesting. He said he started out as a liberal, went to college, and then became a conservative. The guy doesn't sound like the brightest knife in the drawer. He really doesn't. I don't know, but, whatever. It was an interesting show this morning. I don't think they probably got a lot of listeners because who's going to be listening on Good Friday to MAL? Probably all the government people who've taken the day off and probably sleeping in late. But it's interesting listening to him. Yeah, I think Andrew Breitbart is a lot more flash than he is substance. But again, in this internet age, that's all you need, right? Interesting article I found in, when was this? I don't have a date on this. It's probably somewhere in the 80s. Look at that. Radio Alphabet Soup, the ABCs of Naming Washington's Radio Stations by Lawrence Laurent. And I don't know what, I don't even know what paper this is. It might be the Post. It might have been the Star. Gosh, I'm guessing the Post. I'm guessing this is probably in the TV. This is probably in the TV week of the Post back in the 80s. But it goes through a lot of the call letters in the Washington market, some that are no longer there, as you may know, and tells us how they got the call letters. It's kind of interesting. So let's go through some of these, if I can remember them all. Remember WAVA, which is currently at 105.9, 105.9 the edge, 105.1. And it's also on 780 AM, Salem's religious right-wing talk stations. Of course, Arlington, Virginia, WAVA. These calls go way back. WWDC, again, DC 101, not a lot of confusion there, DC, right? WFAX, a religious station, probably one of the only commercial radio stations in the Washington market that is locally owned. One of the few true independent, locally owned commercial radio stations in the market. WFAX, of course, for Fairfax, right? They're in Falls Church, but FAX Fairfax, kind of Fairfax County. WASH, of course, no big deal, Washington, right? WSMD, of course, no big deal, Southern Maryland. WHFS, the heritage calls here that are currently on 1580 AM and also on the resurrected WHFS Progressive Rocker on 94.7's HD2. High fidelity stereo. Washington, this was 102.3 back when they were on 102.3. This was one of the first stereo stations in the Washington market, and they were really marketing it as such. So high fidelity stereo. Of course, WAMU American University and WHUR, Howard University Radio. And of course, the 32 is now WHUT, Howard University Television. You remember when Channel 32 started out, it was WHML. Then they eventually changed to HUT. Okay, now this one I forget. Where's this one here? Okay, WGTS, which we highlighted yesterday in that big ad they took out on the back of the Examiner. WGTS, which is Christian Contemporary 91.1, Columbia Union College. These call letters stand for Gateway to Service. Interesting stuff there. WTOP originally was on 1500 AM, which was said to be at the top of the AM dial. So that's that call. Winks. Remember the old callers WINX, which used to grace 1600 for many years, and a number of other frequencies. Apparently, they had a marketing campaign with somebody winking. So, winks. Okay. WGAY, of course, not the first gay station in the country. Connie B. Gay was the gentleman who owned the station originally, and the call letters were for his name. And of course, WGAY for many years on 99.5 was an easy listening station. WUST, which is currently 11:20 AM with an ethnic format, a brokered ethnic format, for U Street in Washington. Apparently that's where their studios were. WRC, of course, originally the station, the radio stations, and the television station were owned by RCA. So WRC. I believe Philadelphia, wasn't Philadelphia's NBC station, which was originally, what was it? Originally Channel 3 up there. It was either WRCV or something like that, I think, originally, and eventually it got swapped around. KYW, became KYW. But anyhow, WRC was for WRCA. WMAL, call letters, MA Lease, apparently, was an optical company. Well, I think, let me see here. WMAL. MA Lease. MA Lease Optical Company, the licensee of the station. Okay, WMAL used to be the call letters for Channel 7, which eventually became WJLA for Joseph L. Albritton, the owner of the station, and then 107.3 WMAL FM originally, and that became WRQX for Rocks. And of course, another one, WTTG, Channel 5, Thomas T. Goldsmith. He was, I believe he was the original engineer at the station, the Dumont station. He was Dumont's chief engineer. And Channel 5 was named after him. And I think it's in the contract that no matter who owns the station, they have to keep the call letters. So when the station got sold from Metromedia to Fox back in the mid-'80s or late 80s, it stayed the same. Of course, WETA, Washington Educational Telecommunications Association, or Television Association. So anyhow, those are some call letters. Interesting little article here, where your call letters come from. So there we go. All right, folks, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. A chilly, rainy Friday here in the Washington area. Hopefully things will warm up for the weekend. And don't forget to stay tuned.